Hello, Team 3. So thank you so much for your work. As you saw from Jeff, he really did appreciate your suggestion, and in fact, you were very aligned with his thinking, right, in terms of what he wanted. And I think that you did an excellent job, particularly in framing the problem, that you were very convergent in terms of really keeping your eye on the prize, knowing that the goal here was to get him to his dream of the wellness center, and then asking how would you get him there. I'm going to start by just going through your slides and making a few comments. I don't have a lot of comments for this team. I have a few questions more than anything else. So in terms of, I noticed that you folks did great observational research, and then it was interesting, and I was wondering as I was looking at it, how if at all, did your observational research impact your process? So you went out and you took the time to observe how people dress and made these really great insights about that. And I'm wondering if that showed up, how that showed up in your process in terms of your progression at all. And then my other question around that is, if you think about the CPS model, you're always going back to assessing the situation in the center of the circle, right? And observational research is part of assessing the situation. So I wondered if going back into assessing later in the process would have, if you had been doing different observational research, for example, if you had been talking to people who had transitioned their company. So it seemed like a core challenge that you identified for Jeff was around the fact that he wanted to grow. How do you get from here to here while preserving your core business, right? And while also not overexpanding not doing more than he can feasibly do. How do you get to this vision given that he's so caught up in the day-to-day? And that seemed to be, in a way, the core of where you ended up landing in terms of the challenge you saw Jeff having, which I think is excellent. And so then I was wondering, I wonder if they had gone back into doing more, maybe not observational research, but more on-the-ground research, whether it would have been helpful to talk to other people who had made this transition into changing their business from one thing to another, expanding their business mission. Maybe that's, I think it was on your line board, but I can't remember, where you talked about that he would be the Chip Wilson in 10 years, golf will be to business attire what Chip Wilson is to yoga, where, going beyond just people wearing things to the yoga studio and instead him being representative of a broader idea. So I'm not saying that to say that you should have done that. I understand time is short. I'm only saying what I'm saying as a point of reflection as where this kind of observational research would have best served you in an ideal world. So what I found really interesting in terms of Jeff's response, and I found it really interesting, for example, when I look at your web of abstraction, what I see is that you dealt with some things like fear of success or some of the lack of clarity, like some of the sort of more human issues, and that you really dealt with it. And when I was talking to Jeff, it really seemed to me that as much as he had this dream of getting to the next level, that I questioned his preparedness to go there, to actually, that he seemed so concerned with the everyday operations of the business and actually being able to get in clients, that how this transition was actually going to happen and how this was actually going to move from being a dream to being a reality of having this wellness center really, really struck me as being a core issue. And you guys did hit on that in your web, so good work on that. The other thing that struck me in my conversation with Jeff was the degree to which I didn't realize either from my own assessment of the situation, the degree to which he really is committed to styling being the core thing he does, and that it being other people who take on the roles under the Ludique umbrella, who take on the roles of then expanding into greater areas of wellness. Okay. So that looks good. I'd be curious about your process when you write your next paper. What was your process? So I wrote when you, after converging on the problem statement, I just wrote, what was your process like to come to this convergence? So it seems like you did a good job of converging in coming to the problem statement. How did you do that as a team? How did that happen? Let me see. In terms of your BHAG, I'm wondering if, in light of Jeff's feedback, you might end up. I wonder, and this is a true question. It's not a sort of a critique from me as an instructor. It's a true question. I questioned whether there was a gap between Jeff's. And I don't doubt his authenticity in terms of his commitment to respect and kindness, but it also seemed like he was okay with not spreading that, or maybe he wasn't ready for it. It seems so. I wonder if the BHAG might be tweaked to reflect. It seemed like he had more concrete business goals to me. This is a subjective value call, judgment call. So argue with me or take that comment for what it's worth. It was sort of my impression. What I wrote here, is there a gap between what Jeff says he wants and what he actually wants more deeply? I thought your criteria were really good. I think that you still want to more precisely define realistic. Right now, if I understand that you put in parentheses the resources, time, and skills, easy, accessible, it's a little bit fuzzy. And if you don't define realistic in a precise way, then it overlaps with incurs manageable costs, right? Because the incurring of costs, if it incurs only manageable costs, then it's realistic. So right now there's some overlap, so please think about how you might revise that. But otherwise, I thought it was good. I thought that that just as a point of note, whenever you're choosing your criteria, you're always looking for both what is desirable, what do we want, and you're also looking for what is possible. So your criteria were weighted more heavily to what is possible, right? Because your criteria are realistic, generates income, and incurs manageable costs. So those are always, all three are around feasibility and what's possible. And then there was one, supports transformation towards Jeff's vision. And so that was the only one that was about, well, will it accomplish something desirable? I want to be very clear that I'm not saying that that's a problem. I'm just pointing that out to you as a point of awareness. So that's a good thing, depending on how you interpret it, that could very much be a good thing, that your primary focus, 3/4 of these criteria, make sure this is a realistic idea. So just so you're aware of what you sort of naturally did by default. I wonder, in the light of Jeff's feedback, whether you want to now tweak the workshop idea. So clearly he doesn't seem that interested in being the deliverer of the workshops. I will leave that to you. You heard his feedback, and you seem to, have a firm grip on the process and what's going on, and I'll let you sort of grapple with the feedback, make sense of it, and I look forward to seeing what you then submit on the weekend. Let me know if you have any questions. Great work, team, and I'll see you online.